Hello, friends of Studio Brule. This is Steve Brule, and this is Coffee Time, where I go over some of the things that come across my desk in the last day or so. Welcome to the show, John and Psyopsin Sorks, John Batten, a few of the regulars up there. I draw your attention to my VIP club membership card to the patriarchy, which authorizes me to comment on all of the comings and goings of the evil feminist empire that has its thousands of tentacles spread around the world in a death grip. So today, the topic, surgeon. I thought you said stripper. This came to my attention by a tweet from Janice Fiamengo just this morning, and I thought it was at once trivial, funny, and revealing, all combined. So I thought I would talk about it today. Let's have a look at Janice's tweet, shall we? And let me expand this for you. Reading from the top. Incredible. Women protest sexism, but it wasn't, by posting loose photos of themselves in response to a study suggesting, not specifying women, that physicians shouldn't post unprofessional content. Please, gals, grow out of your petulant exhibitionism. And the word petulant here, I think, is the pivotal key domineering theme here. Petulant, self-absorbed, totally unwilling to accept any boundaries. That's the modern women today. Let's have a look at what all the hullabaloo was about. Here, CNN is reporting on this. A medical journal apologized. There you go. Anytime any woman, anywhere in the world complains about anything, the offending party must apologize. Grovel on your knees. I'm so sorry to have offended one of the goddesses of the world. This is what it's coming down to. A medical journal apologized after an article prompted health professionals to post images of themselves in bikinis. The bikini. And this just came out 2 days ago on Saturday. Let's have a look at what all the hullabaloo is about. Here's one of the pictures of the professionally offended professionals posted in response to this so-called terrible, horrible affront to femininity. Some of their pictures are posting on Twitter. Okay, so let's have a look at a couple of quotes from the article. Quick sip of my coffee here. Reading from the top. A medical journal is retracting an article. Get that. It's not enough to apologize. You can't explain. You have to retract nowadays. This is all about scrubbing the literature of anything offensive to the perpetually and professionally offended. A medical journal is retracting an article that called some social media posts potentially unprofessional after outraged health professionals flooded Twitter with photos of themselves posing in bikinis and holding alcoholic drinks. These are the professionals today, the professionals, and I'm going to get into that in a little bit. And I have to remind myself I've got a little bit of my own to say about all of this stuff in shortly, and I may just squeeze it in the middle or wait for the end for that. The hashtag, quote, or hashtag #MedBikini quickly trended Friday after the Journal of Vascular Surgery posted the article titled Prevalence of Unprofessional Social Media Content Among Young Vascular Surgeons. This is actually an important topic because for the first time in history, this is the first generation really dealing with social media presence while building a profession. And a profession of medicine is particularly important because, look, people are putting their lives in your hands. You're a surgeon, okay? Let's just keep this in mind, folks. Let's keep this in mind. The reason why this one is particularly important is these are professionals, but not just any professionals. These are professionals in which other people are deciding to let them take their lives in your hands. You think they're not going to scrutinize your social media content before going under the knife? Your knife? It's a pretty important topic. Whether you like the results of it or not are irrelevant. It's an important topic. So let's have a look. This is the prevalence of unprofessional social media among young vascular surgeons. Reading from the top again, the article specifically mentioned photos that included provocative posing in bikinis and swimwear and consuming alcohol. I mean, really? Is anybody really surprised that posing in provocative clothing of any kind and being shown swigging drinks around might be taken as an unprofessional conduct, and that might be looked down upon someone who's going to lie on a surgery table under your knife with anesthetic and having you cut on their veins? Wow, I'm not surprised. I wouldn't want to see the surgeon I'm going in to get surgery on out there drinking and stripping every night. No, I do want to see a professional, someone who's serious enough to dedicate their lives to being the best they can at their profession, because they could kill me. And I only seek out a surgeon if things are very, very, very serious. Nobody goes under the knife for fun unless you're one of these Hollywood freaks who are looking to fix up their faces, boobs and butts and every other part of their body because they're not happy with who they are. Let's read on. Vera Bajarias, a nephrologist in training in the Philippines, posted a photo of herself in a bikini with the words, "I can wear swimwear to the beach in my free time and be a competent and compassionate physician at work." Notice that what she's claiming there was never at play in this article. It was never, ever suggested that she couldn't wear swimwear, go to the beach in your free time, or do whatever you want in your free time. The entire research project is upon the effect of the social media presence in our day on the image of your competence and your professionalism, not of just of you, but of the entire profession. And it didn't say you couldn't wear a bikini. It talked about posing provocatively in a bikini and posting it on your social media account publicly. And they do deal in the article about the preference to having your social media accounts private. I have my Facebook private, mostly because I'm sick of getting threats and nonsense from feminists. But that's a different story. What she's claiming is at stake here is not even at stake. And this is how tricky feminists always switch things around to make themselves appear to be victims and courageously fighting the machine, the mad, bad machine that's trying to keep them all down, that's oppressing them through all of history. Got to keep that lie alive. Here's Vera Bajarias here again. Misogyny is medieval. Do I have to wear my white coat at all times to deserve the title of professional? Fun, sexy, smart, and hardworking can exist in the same space. I can wear swimwear to the beach in my free time and be a competent, compassionate physician at work. Again, nothing to do with the study or the research paper published. Nothing to do with it. Nothing. Let's carry on. The backlash should have erupted the minute this paper saw the light of day, she told CNN. As a female doctor, I'm incredibly aware of how sexist the medical world is. No, it is not, unless it's in favor of women, because even the submission or the admission requirements to medical schools favor women. If medicine is sexist, it's in favor of women. Unless women are regarded as equals, we cannot achieve full progress, not just in medicine, but in any other field of occupation. Listen, sweetheart, to be equal, you have to have a lot of privileges taken away from you. In fact, you probably wouldn't got into medical school or been a surgeon in the first place if you're like the majority of women who are held up, pushed up, propped up by special programs and the help of all the men around them. So if you're looking for equality, prepare to take a big step down. several men come to the same conclusion and are standing up there for their female colleagues. I'm not the slightest bit surprised at that. Of all the white knights out there, for whatever reason, some of them just trying to pad up their social posturing, their virtue signaling. Others are hoping to get laid, as usual. That's very often the case for these white knight men. I don't feel like this study applies the same social responsibility to men and women equally, Anthony Tucker, an ear, nose, throat surgeon in Florida, told CAN. Well, if you read the damn thing, you would see that it applies equally to men and women. But these dingbats don't read the damn studies. They just assume, once again, that the poor dear women are being discriminated against. Reading from the top. In my profession, male physicians have behaved poorly for decades and with little grief. However, when a strong-willed, confident, intelligent, and very skilled woman does the same, they are given grief. I have seen it countless times. Let me tell you what I've seen countless times, you brain-dead, blind simp, okay? I've had several encounters with female physicians over my lifetime. Once when I had a back injury from playing squash, and it wasn't a serious back injury, but they couldn't figure it out, and they sent me to a back specialist who just happened to be a female surgeon and her young female apprentice. They had me walk up and down, staring at my back ostensibly with almost no clothes on, and I caught them almost throughout leering at my butt. Now, I'm not bragging here, and my legs, but I was in very fine athletic shape in my early 30s at that time, as fine as an athletic shape as you probably can get a male specimen. I wasn't of Olympic caliber, but let's just say in those days, I was pretty well built. And these women openly leered at me in the hallway of the hospital as they, quote, examined me. And that's not the only time. In my when I had to apply for U.S. residency, I had to get a physical. If I didn't get that physical from that authorized doctor, American doctor, I would not get my American residency. And this goes back about 15 years now, and I don't have that residency anymore, but that's besides the point. I went in for my obligatory physical, and I had to have the obligatory prostate examination, and everybody knows what the prostate exam is. And this was a female doctor. And this, where you'll see just how creepy female doctors are, every last bit as creepy as male doctors. That female doctor is winking at me while examining the prostate. I'm not proud of it. It's an embarrassing moment in my life, but it didn't crush me. And I am not crushed for life because you could call that frickin' rape. And they would call that rape if it was a male doctor doing it to a woman. But that female doctor was winking at me while she examined my prostate. Imagine that. Imagine the sex roles reversed in that, huh? Don't tell me that you've only seen male doctors behaving badly. It's only that we only hold male doctors to account for their behavior. Women doctors get off on anything and everything they want to do. In my last physical exam, which is another female doctor, and it's hard to find a male doctor these days because they're preferentially pumping out only female doctors, it seems. And in my towns, there are almost no doctors available. My male doctor retired. They transferred all the files over to a female doctor, and a young one at that, not bad looking, but that's not the point. I went in there for an exam. I wanted a good exam, the full deal. Did I get a good exam? No. She was too shy and refused to do the whole exam. So I didn't get a full look over. I didn't get a prostate check. I didn't get any of that stuff. I got some questions and sent for blood work. As a 59-year-old or 58-year-old at the time, that's not a full exam. So I'll tell you this. I, for one, do not trust female doctors. I do not, and I will not. Because with the affirmative action and the preference entrance exams and lowered admission bars and the help that they get from all the men around them all the way through medical school, they're not as well trained as male doctors in general. I have seen one exception to that. When my ex-wife had to have brain surgery, one of her surgeons, a brain surgeon at the Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore, Maryland, she was unquestionably brilliant and a most skilled both person, a very, very well-conducted, proud, and a skilled, competent surgeon. I had no qualms putting my trust in her. But in general, male doctors are held to a higher standard, both to get into medical school, to get through medical school, and in the profession itself. Female doctors, like females in most of our culture, are given a buy and a pass on everything. The bar is so low to entrance for some women in some professions nowadays that the bar is actually sitting right on the ground, and you'd have to trip over it to not be able to get over that bar. That's where we're at in our culture today. And we're seeing it come out in the petulant, spoiled attitudes of professionals today. So that is only a part of what I wanted to say before. I'm going to carry on with the rest of this article here. Let's see, what are we going to? Seen this countless times from male doctors. Yes. Look, bad behavior isn't restricted to men or women. It's in both sides. The point is today that we only hold men accountable for bad behavior. A woman can almost, and sometimes can, get away with even murdering her husband, killing her patients. There's nurses that have gotten away with killing dozens upon dozens of patients before they're caught. And why? Because nobody's really willing to hold women to a same degree of professional standards and accountability that they hold men. Let's read on. Anthony Tucker says, although no one will want to see this dad bod, here it is in full support of my female colleagues and this misogynistic study. Look at this. Misogynistic study for including posing erotically in a bikini. Okay, you're calling that a misogynistic study? You're a moron. You don't deserve to be a doctor. I wouldn't go to you either. Without my female mentor in med school and in the one residency, I wouldn't be the surgeon I am today. Well, then you shouldn't be a surgeon today. Let's read on. It evaluated the accounts of 480 young vascular surgeons to see if their social media posts could be labeled as blatantly unprofessional or potentially unprofessional to a future patient searching for a doctor. 68% of the accounts were men, 32% were female. Over half of the could be publicly identified. So there you have it. Medical school graduates at least 50% women. In many cases, more than 50% women. Now, I don't know what the vascular surgeon percentage is. Maybe that represents the vascular surgeon's percentage. I don't know. But 68% were male accounts. They weren't out there looking to target women by any stretch. They were looking there to see what is the risk to the reputation of their profession. And they should be doing that. Let's read this on. The article based their research on a 2012 study that found that over 40% of adults search for their potential doctor online and said the information they found impacted their choice of physician. Look at that. A perfectly legitimate reason to do a perfectly legitimate study that is not the slightest bit sexist in any manner, and yet they want it retracted from publication. How do you even maintain the professionalism of your profession if you can't even study it without the cancel culture, professionally offended mob shutting you down and ending you? Somebody somewhere along the road here is going to have to grow a spine and start saying, get the hell out of here. You don't run our profession. Reading from the top. Clearly unprofessional examples of online content included photos of intoxication, talking badly about a colleague or a hospital, and insurance violations. Potentially unprofessional content included those examples plus posts about politically controversial or religious topics. They're trying to protect the image of their profession here. That's all they're trying to do in their report. They're trying to find out how at risk they are. The study found that 26% of accounts had one of these two types of posts and concluded that young surgeons should be aware of the permanent public exposure of unprofessional content that can be accessed by peers, patients, and current future employers. Shouldn't they be concerned? Yes, they should be concerned. Just like parents should be concerned of what their kids are putting out online, because that's for life. You have to have your head under a rock for an awful long time to not realize that social media can cause you an incredible amount of damage to your life. They're trying to help their own professionals in their own professions. And they picked out and misrepresented one tiny little part of that study, and then they called the whole study misogynistic, and then they're having it retracted. And I'll tell you this, I've already downloaded my copy of that study, so they're not going to have that go erased off into posterity. But that's what they're trying to do. The single unifying theme around all of this stuff is that in our culture, gynocentric culture run by feminists, they reject and object to any and every boundary of behavior placed against them. They want to be able to run around doing whatever they want, and they want everybody to say, oh, that's professional too, and it's okay. Well, we need the culture to get back to the fact that some behaviors are just not okay, even if it's coming from a woman. Being female should not be a carte blanche to do whatever you want, whenever you want, wherever you want. But that's where feminism and our gynocentric culture is pushing all of this. Let's carry on. The study also admitted it saw positive professionalism being practiced as well, and that neither men nor women were more likely to post unprofessional or potentially unprofessional content to their accounts. In other words, neither men nor women. Now, the people objecting to this are claiming that the study categorizes wearing a bikini as inappropriate, but it does not. As usual, the professionally offended feminist, I have a choice word there, but I'm not going to use it. The professionally offended feminists twisted it. They objected to posing provocatively in either lingerie, underwear, or bikinis. This was about being seen as a whore or a prostitute. Is that really too much to ask of a surgeon that's going to operate on you and maybe cut you open, maybe kill you? Reading from the top. The study also admitted it saw possible... Oh, I already read that. Okay. Due to the backlash, one of the authors and the journal itself issued apologies for the article late Friday night, and the journal announced that the study would be retracted. Now is what we're having here is the outrage mob determining what can be published and what can't be published. The outrage mob has become the communist dictator of our culture. They're the George Orwell's Ministry of Truth. They run it. Well, they've been trained by the Ministry of Truth, and they're running the culture that way, eliminating whatever they don't like. And John Banton here has the right thing. This is the only right response today. We've got such a crazy damn culture out there trying to get everybody to their knees, apologizing, anybody who's not female, all men to their knees, all non-LGBTQ, blah, 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 to their knees, apologizing for everything and anything as it comes. This is really the appropriate response now. Never apologize. Don't. We've done enough apologizing for 6 lifetimes. Let's call it 7, just to be safe. Reading from the top. Our intent was to empower surgeons to be aware and then personally decide what may be easily available for patients and colleagues to see about us. Author Thomas Cheng said in a thread on Twitter. Perfectly reasonable stuff that a professional organization should be doing. But cancel culture and the outrage mob will have none of it. They've got to find something misogynistic in everything that comes out. However, this was not the result, he says. We are sorry that we made the young surgeons feel targeted and that we were judgmental. Incredible. They don't have this backbone to stand 15 seconds against the criticism of this outrage mob. Not 15 seconds. And here he is, Thomas Cheng. I would like to apologize for the paper prevalence, unprofessional social media content among young vascular surgeons. I am very, very sorry. Our intent was to empower surgeons to be aware and then personally decide what may be easily available for patients and colleagues to see about us. But I'm not allowed to talk reasonably in defense of my profession. No, the higher goal here is satisfying the outrage mob. The journal said in its statement on Twitter that it understood the intent of the authors, but admitted that they failed in the review of the study in regard to conscious and unconscious bias. Feminism, it's everywhere. Feminism, like a bad smell. You get in there and you just can't get it out. It also concluded that the authors did not get permission to use the database identifying whom the young surgeons were and chose to remove the study and retract its contents. That's the excuse they're using. They're all just covering their asses here. Not one spinal bone amongst all of them. Some comments applauded the apologies as taking responsibility, but get this, folks, and you knew this was coming. You knew it as well as I did. But others still said that it didn't go far enough to keep issues like this from happening again. This issue, in other words, I can't even keep a straight face with this stuff anymore. These people are such simplistic little offense grannies. Didn't go far enough to keep issues like this from happening again. In other words, it was so offensive. It was so traumatic to see the word bikini used in that manner, that you shouldn't be posing in provocative manners as a professional of that profession and putting it in social media publicly. It was so traumatic that something really needs to be done to ensure that this horrible, traumatic event never can possibly ever happen again. Because, you know, women's entire lives are at stake. They can be utterly psychologically destroyed by a paper that nobody reads and nobody cares about. By a paper that says it's best not to publicly post your posing erotically in bikini and lingerie if you're going to be a vascular surgeon, because your patients might be not terribly comfortable with your second job as a stripper. Is it so much to ask? Well, let's have a look at some of the other photos that they chose to put in public here. Here are your vascular surgeons having a nice drink in their bikini. Nothing wrong with that in my book. But to make it the center of your professional life, now that one's going to cause some sweet dreams, I would say, amongst the lads who are seeing it. But still, look, if you are needing serious surgery, guys, find a male surgeon. It's much safer. Male surgeons had to work twice as hard as women to get into medical school, and they probably did the work of several women to help those women get through too. They are far better. They're far better surgeons, and they're not all bent out of shape about some article that says, well, posing provocatively in a bikini is a bad thing to do as a surgeon. No. Get a male surgeon. It's far safer. This is going to be the topic of some dreams tonight, I'll tell you. I think she missed her calling as a call girl. And there's another one on Twitter, just proving that doctors have cleavage, I guess. That's the point. A professional doctor has cleavage. She wanted to make sure everybody out there in social media knows that she has cleavage, and this is what it looks like. And this is the kind of underwear she wears. This is professional. This is actually a surgeon, folks. In response to this horrible event, this traumatic report being published, she decided that as a professional surgeon, it's best that she puts a picture of her cleavage on social media for posterity with her favorite lingerie underneath. There you go. What can you say? Let's have a quick look at the actual article itself. The actual report, not the article from CNN. This was reported on and published in December of 2019. And of course, the professionally offended are incensed that they didn't receive outrage the minute that it was published. The minute. Let's just take a look at how horribly offensive and traumatic this report must be for these women. One half of recent and soon-to-be graduating vascular surgery trainees had an identifiable social media account with more than 1/4 of these containing unprofessional content. That's the conclusions. So there is a lot of unprofessional content publicly viewable on social media for vascular surgeons, people who are seeking patients to put their lives in their hands. Account holders who self-identified as vascular surgeons were more likely to be associated with unprofessional social media behavior. Young surgeons should be aware of the permanent public exposure of unprofessional content that can be accessed by peers, patients, and current and future employers. I just got to ask you guys, would you really be comfortable with some surgeon who takes such deep offense at this report that she has to publicly stand out about this report? What issues are at the top of their mind? They don't got something more important to worry about? You got a patient out there recovering? Maybe have a look at him. Instagram. Okay, so here we go. Clearly unprofessional content include Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act violations, intoxicated appearance, unlawful behavior, possession of drugs and drug paraphernalia, and uncensored profanity or offensive comments about colleagues, work, and patients. Notice there's no yet mention of a bikini in there. That's where they're saying clearly unprofessional content included. This is a report they want to retract. Potentially unprofessional content included holding, consuming alcohol, inappropriate attire, censored profanity, controversial political or religious comments, and controversial social topics. These categories were based on previously published, I'm going to get into that in a minute. But notice here, there's absolutely no provision to in their conclusions to suggest that you shouldn't wear a bikini anywhere in their conclusions. They include controversial social topics. These categories were based on previously, this is important, read this. These categories were based on previously published studies of unprofessional social media content among general surgery and urology residents. In other words, they didn't make it up themselves. This is existing research they patterned their study off of. Read this. We chose to use similar categories to allow as direct a comparison as possible between our results and those already performed in other specialties. Any differences among the individual investigators, if they occurred, were resolved by consensus among the authors. So in other words, they did the same study other people did, but this is published in a different era where the professionally offended, the irreversibly offended, constantly victimed crowd cannot stand for any suggestion that everything they do isn't absolutely perfect and wonderful. This is what this generation wants. Whatever they decide to do, whenever they want to do it and wherever they do it, they want it to be classified as all just hunky-dory fine. No barriers, no limits, no boundaries to behavior is acceptable to the nouveau goddesses of the young generation of feminists. There we go. Jean-Pierre has got it right there. Doctors without ethics is what they want. They want absolutely no professional accountability to their behavior in any manner or respect at all. What's that? What is accountability and professionality? Oh, that's a patriarchal masculine things. We can only punish men for infringing on those things. This is the direction of our culture today. Let's read from the top here. 30% contained evidence of potentially unprofessional content. There were no instances of HIPAA violations, and the most common forms of potentially unprofessional content were holding alcohol and controversial political, religious, social comments, 20 accounts. Inappropriate attire included pictures in underwear, provocative Halloween costumes, provocative posing in bikinis and swimwear. Controversial political and religious comments were any derogatory and or demeaning comments directed toward an individual or specific faith. Controversial social comments were largely limited to comments centered around specific stances on abortion and gun control. But the only thing that these harpies got onto was the mention of bikinis and swimwear. And as anybody who's ever been to a beach knows, a lot of bikinis are more revealing than underwear. And they don't even say you can't wear a bikini. They don't want you to pose provocatively in your bikini and post it publicly on social media because they don't think it reflects well on the profession. Is it really that big a deal? Apparently, to these over-entitled, overprivileged, and pampered feminists, it is, because they've been accustomed to a life of absolutely no restrictions on their behavior. Any restriction, any boundary is given as evidence of oppression. These are the kinds of princesses we've raised. And in the discussion of this paper, reading from the top here, in 1999, the Accreditation Council of Graduate Medical Education and American Board of Medical Specialties developed the 6 core competencies of medical education. All right, there's 6 core competencies. Professionalism is one of the 6 core competencies and has continued to be emphasized within this context and extends beyond just direct patient encounters. Despite this, a 2012 national survey of state medical boards found that 92% of responding medical boards had dealt with at least one violation of online professionalism. Violations ranged from inappropriate patient communications to derogatory remarks and depictions of intoxications. Our evaluation of recent vascular surgery graduates revealed that almost one half of almost one half of graduates had publicly identifiable account, and 1/4 of them contained content that could be deemed inappropriate by the public, peers, or a medical board. They have a very legitimate reason for doing the study. Otherwise, why do you have this ethics board, this medical ethics board in the first place? If you're not going to study what's going on in the profession and then try to correct it, I think, why have an ethics board at all? The AMA has attempted to provide some guidance to physicians who choose to use social media, so they're actually trying to help them. Guidance such as this represents a sobering approach to our online presence, which is not widely known or practiced. Both general surgery and urology have performed similar studies looking at the degree of unprofessional content on Facebook. So the whole hullabaloo about bikinis is crap. This is about professional conduct in general, particularly public conduct. And the issue is not about whether you can wear or cannot wear a bikini in public. It was never about that. That's how feminists lied about it. It is about posing provocatively in either bikini or suggestive clothing and publishing it publicly. Notice that you can pose provocatively and publish it privately, and they don't care. They're trying to protect the reputation of their profession, as they should. Well, that's all of the full content that I have for today, but I do have a couple of words that I was thinking I'm going to say. I don't know if I'll say it all right now, but let me have a look at my notes here. I think that possibly this particular video, of all the videos I've done, will probably get me permanently labeled as a misogynist. If so, so be it. The bar for being labeled a misogynist today sits on the ground, flat on the ground. Anything but glowing, fawning, sycophantic flattery of women will immediately yield cries of misogyny in our world today. The response to this study is almost perfect proof that our culture is gynocentric, because only a gynocentric culture could make such a big deal out of suggesting that it's not professional to pose provocatively in a bikini and publish the pictures in public on social media. So I'm going to jump ahead on my notes here a little bit. As I suggested before, I'm not going to use a female physician again. Females have just got, the bar is just too low for women in a profession like that. If you're going to go under the surgery for a knife, you better make sure that the bars were as high as possible for that person to get hold of that knife in the first place. They should be not lowered bars or higher bars for women or men. They should be the same bars. But I've seen this my whole life of male colleagues helping female colleagues along in homework and various different things, making sure that and women getting higher raised grades for complaining or crying or suggesting that they're going to fail because they this or that item. You just can't trust the professionals if they're female. The males are required to work twice as hard in all of this. So I put this down to our culture's unwillingness to hold women to any sort of standards now, and our lowering of the standards, giving passes to female students and professionals. Throughout my university career, I've seen how men carry women through the tough parts of the curriculum or projects. And I now suspect that many women would not have graduated without the help of many of the men around them. And I've seen this literally. I know this is going to get me in a lot of trouble saying this, but I've seen it. I can't deny it. I've never seen it the other way around. I've never seen a woman carry a man through a course or a project. You guys can tell me if wrong. Maybe there are. I'll have to say that that doesn't mean that I haven't worked with some very competent women. I have. One of the women I worked with in process database control systems was one of the best database programmers I ever ran into. She was brilliant. She was a math student. Nobody carried her, but she didn't have to run around carrying anybody either. Although I did learn stuff from her. But what I've seen more often in my life is men putting aside their own works and responsibility to help women who, for one reason or other, can't make it or are crying or whatever. And with the affirmative action, lowering of the bars for entrance, and all the special programs and quotas for women in professions like this, particularly when it comes to professions where you're putting your life at stake, I don't think it's worth the risk. Just look for a male surgeon, or you better, if it's a female surgeon, you better check out her track record really, really, really well. If women want to be taken seriously, they will have to object to special treatment of every kind. Women themselves will have to object to all these special programs and say, get rid of them. They will have to pay serious attention to criticism and use it to improve themselves, not reject every aspect of criticism. But the exact opposite is happening today. Women demand ever more special treatment and exemption from criticism. This is degrading the professions that they enter. And anyone who wants good service is 100% justified in questioning the competence of today's female professionals. I know I'm stating this strongly, but what other conclusion can you come to when this group as a cohort are given special low bar entries and assistance throughout their education program? There's a very strong likelihood that if you see a female in a profession like that, that she was hired for being female because the quotas demand it, the affirmative action demands it, not for being the best candidate. But if you see a man in that position, you can rest assured, guaranteed, that he had to be the absolute very best candidate available, because he would not, for certain, would not have gotten hired if he wasn't. This is a very sad state of today's professions, and it extends to all of today's professions, that we have to be suspicious of the qualifications and competence because of the woman in the position. But there's no other conclusion when both the entry bars and the requirements for passing are lowered for women. This is the result of over 50 years of feminism in a gynocentric culture, and it was all too predictable. It was made possible by the gynocentric culture and pushed inexorably by feminism. You have an obligation to yourself and your family to be especially suspicious of the skill and qualifications of every female professional. Our culture has elevated them above criticism, no matter the behavior or competence. And this is a dangerous situation. So I do suggest protect yourself. And that's all I've got to say today. And I expect that if this video gets any traction, I will be labeled as world's #1 misogynist for speaking out against the positive bias, the lowered bars for entrance and the lowered bars for passing that exist for women, and just about only women, in our culture today. That's been going on for generations, at least 2 generations. So there's a lot of professionals out there with questionable skills and competence. So you do need to protect yourself. Having said that, that's all I have today. And like I like to remind everybody, do something you love every single day. Even if you're surrounded by enemies, you still want to end your life feeling satisfied, fulfilled, and contented. Live every day so that that day you end your life, you can say, I really enjoyed this trip. I might just come back. So long, folks.